Today is going to be part 2 of the free plants I've received from work so far. These are a lot of common plants that you will see in garden centers and in plant shops. They're very easygoing. Some of my more reliable plants that are I'll just let those go. They'll be fine. So I'll go over care and as well as some issues and things like that that I have come across. Turns out these are all Aroids, so let's get started. What's up, nature lovers? Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kayla and this is Nature Will Nurture. We'll start with the beginning of the alphabet. Just kidding. But this first set of plants is Aglaonema, so they do start with an A. We'll go with what you will see most commonly first. This is Aglaonema commutatum, I believe, Silver Bay. This particular plant I actually didn't get from work, but the plants that I have gotten from them are not very pretty. They were replaced for a reason. Mind you, all of these plants, actually most of them I think were from cuttings. I had to prune plants and I propagated them. This one I actually got from one of the big box stores. I had known I had wanted to get one of these if I found one, but they're somewhat pricey when they're in larger containers. This is just a 6-inch pot. Since I've purchased this though, I have begun working with it a lot more at work. Typically I've been using these in this size in living walls, but I have started to try to incorporate into other accounts where I needed small 6-inch plants. This one is taken from cuttings that I propagated from a plant that I had to prune. I actually made several plants that I gifted away after propagating them. This is Aglaonema commutatum Emerald Beauty is the way that we usually use them. I think a very, very similar variety you might see is also called Maria. And I believe I talked about these in my low light video that I made a few weeks back. The care for this particular type and the Silver Bay Aglaonema I just talked about are quite similar. They are low light tolerant, and in the previous low light video I did talk about how these were some of my most favorite options to use in low light areas because as their new growth comes out, it's better well adapted to the area, and it grows slightly faster than something like a snake plant or a ZZ, so they tend to adapt well long term. And they're somewhat easygoing with their watering, though usually in lower light situations you do want to let them dry out in between waterings. And when I say that, I say pretty far down. I can still feel this terracotta pot has moisture in it. That is one way to determine if your plant still is fine. This plant has been through a lot. I think the plants that I propagated from were stressed, and that's why I've got some yellowing leaves here, but eventually this plant will figure it out and start growing very healthy new growth. So besides feeling the soil of the plant to determine if it needs water, sometimes you can tell by the way the leaves feel. These leaves are already pretty stressed, so they kind of curl a little bit. But you will see sometimes that the leaves will wilt when it's very desperate for water. And they'll be very sad looking, so that's how you know when it really needs water. Another way to tell is by lifting the pot, especially if it's a plastic nursery pot, out of the decorative pot and feel the weight of the plastic pot. It will be usually pretty top heavy. This feels still pretty heavy, and I know I haven't watered this in a while, but there's still got to be some moisture down there, and so I'm going to keep leaving it be. Plus the plant looks very perky still. And this variety we call Wishes, but I think it's also got another name which I'll list below that you might find it under as well. Something with ruby I think is in the name, but I know it as Wishes. And this one's a fun one. I really enjoy the color. I had a very pretty one before we moved last, but I must have gotten rid of it, gave it away or whatever. Next opportunity I had from work, I grabbed another one because I really do enjoy looking at the colors and the patterns. It's very nice texture in between the plants, or where behind me is where it lives. You'll find in low light though, these plants that have the patterned leaves like this, in lower light they'll start to lose the variegation and put on greener leaves. And so this tells me that it's not exactly happy where it's at, it could use more light. This one is probably called Spring Snow, I believe is what it's called. And same with the pink wishes. Instead of the pink, it has the white spots. And this is another one you might see in big box stores. Same concept though, it tends to need a little bit more light than the all green varieties. So I'd say medium light, don't give it too much direct sunlight, nothing like a west facing window. It would probably do very well in an east window and pretty decent right up against a north facing window. I have it under a grow light though, so we'll see. I'm not as picky about how my variegation looks though. I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to that. But again, this is one that I really enjoy. I think it looks really good in a white pot. This one I have to kind of share the screen with. Ooh, I think it's got spider webs on it too. Oh, I feel it. This is also another variegated plant. This name, I know it as Sparkling Sarah. My sister's name is actually Sarah, so I gave her a small pot of this a while back. Same sort of situation where the light, if it's not the best, I'll get more green leaves. But again, that doesn't really bother me too much. But the more light, it probably would put out more variegation. And so I might put it outside for the summer, and I'll probably get some really very beautiful foliage. This one might end up being part of a propagation video that I'm going to show in the future. But you can see, and I think I've shown it in my houseplant tour, my informal houseplant tour, where it's very leggy. And I did break a piece off, and I'll probably put it in a close-up, but there are new shoots growing out of it, and that kind of gives you a good idea of what it would look like after pruning it back. But I can always stick those stalks right back in the soil and make this plant really full. I enjoy this plant. It's something you definitely see around out in the big box stores and whatnot. And the reason mine is so big is because I took 3 or 4 6-inch plants and put them in a 10-inch plant once I had to replace them from whatever account they came from. And it's been with me for some time now. I have one more plant that starts with the letter A, so let me grab it. So this is Anthurium, or Flamingo Flower. Anthurium, I'll have to Google the actual scientific name, so I'll put that below. But I just got this, actually I think this past week, we did a rotation at work. We rotate out flowers, so I was able to catch my coworker while he was there rotating out my blooms for me. I snagged these plants. But yeah, beautiful heart-shaped leaves. This plant is in, it looks like predominantly cocoa coir. There might be some moss in there, I'm not entirely sure, but it is probably very nutrient deficient long term, so I will have to keep fertilizing these as long as I have them in my care. And maybe when I repot them, I might repot them into something that might have some more nutrients in it. But usually these plants are epiphytic, meaning the plants don't really grow in soil, they actually grow on trees and things like that. So I would have a pretty orchid bark dominant mix for this plant to be in. But yeah, it's very nice. And these are also something that you would see in stores, maybe even your grocery store, especially around Valentine's Day and whatnot. But I like them because they're very hardy. They're very easy to take care of. Yeah, I would say water when dry. I'd say about medium light, east-facing window will probably make it the most happiest. I'd say if you have it any lower light than that, it'll probably drop its blooms and eventually, and might not bloom as frequently, and the leaves might come out smaller than normal. So just things to keep in mind, that it's not going to look perfect 100% of the time. It kind of has to adapt to whatever situation it's in. One last thing to mention about the Anthurium flowers, if you haven't watched my Aroid pollination video, I do talk about Anthurium pollination a little bit. Not necessarily what we would do to pollinate the plant, but how they're pollinated out in nature. So I thought that's just interesting. If you're interested, I will link that as well. And I have noticed with this batch that they do come in with some of these leaf spots. I think it's something that I would probably end up cutting off when I get around to it, because by the looks of it, it has like a yellow halo around it, which tells me it's either bacterial or fungal. And those are things that can spread from leaf to leaf and potentially even plant to plant. But if you are handling it, I would recommend sanitizing your tools before and after using them, and also washing your hands. Next I'll talk about Pothos, aka Epipremnum aureum. In here I've got some long vines, which was a little bit of an experiment because I have these long vines I get from work because I have to prune a plant pretty far back. Usually I let them grow long and then I prune it back one vine at a time, let it grow long, prune back a vine at a time so something else grows long. So there's always some length to the plant. It's just you can't let it touch the floor or hang past a certain point sort of thing. So I'll get these long vines and I'm like, well, I want some long draping vines in my kitchen, or at least Drew did. Drew wanted some long draping vines in the kitchen. And so I brought home long vines. I cut some of them up so you can see, but I kept some very long. And I put them in leca, which are the clay balls here, and then I fill it with water. I think in this, when I flushed it last, I put some hydrogen peroxide in the water too, just a little bit, just to help kind of kill off any bacteria and stuff. So it's probably almost time for me to do another flush because I can see one of the stalks is rotted, so I do need to remove that. And what I've been doing is every time I found a rotted stalk, I've been cutting it back and seeing what happens. This is Epipremnum aureum. There's some neon pothos in here, as well as some golden pothos. Since we're talking about neon pothos, I thought I'd bring out, this is also from neon pothos cuttings from another plant. This I have in my west-facing window just here above me. And I think I probably propagated them in water and then potted them up. They're a little slower growing, and I do have some bacterial spotting as well, so that's something that I'm just kind of winging it. I'm seeing what happens, but I do see a lot of growth coming from below, and so I'll just try to keep that protected from the spots. It's a little difficult to water, so like I said, I'm winging it in terms of trying to prevent the bacterial rot from getting any further. But I have noticed with neon pothos they can be prone to spots. So that might be something to just keep an eye out for. If it's not a whole lot, cut it off. But since I only have like one leaf on a lot of these plants, that I feel like I'm just going to leave it until they start growing more and then I can cut back. I tend to keep these either in terracotta pots like this, and then I put a pretty barky, airy mix in there. When it's in terracotta pot and I have it hanging, I probably should put a little bit more potting mix in there just for moisture retention. And so that way I don't have to water them as frequently. So really I keep an eye on the leaves. When they feel kind of soft and pliable, they'll feel more firm when they're not thirsty. And I think this plant actually could probably use a watering. Sanitize after touching those leaves. This is the last Epipremnum aureum I have from my work plants. This one I believe is called Marble Queen. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate or not, but these were also taken from cuttings. I was pruning some more plants back and decided to take the cuttings home and propagate them. It's interesting because these leaves, some of them are the normal pothos shape, but then I get some that are like this. I know it's probably hard to tell and maybe only I can tell from this angle, but they remind me more of the like Pothos and Joy or Pearls and Jade, that they're leaf shaped, where they're just slightly more like roughly rippled almost and not quite so spade shaped. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how this one grows over time. But care is generally let it dry out. I talked a little bit about the soil mixture already. This one I can feel still has moisture in it because the terracotta pot is cool to the touch. Pothos also enjoy east-facing windows. East-facing windows generally are very good for our houseplants. I have this under grow lights. It's actually on the floor underneath my big light here and seems to be doing okay so far. And that is the Pothos Epipremnum aureum. So I have two more plants for you. This is Philodendron hederaceum. I think in our company we still call them Philodendron cordatum, but I think that's technically an old name now. It's a synonym, for instance. What else do they call it? Oh, Philodendron scandens. That's another name for it. These are from cuttings from long vines at work. And then last week I pulled this plant from the account because it's very scraggly, and I figured I could stick this in here at some point. Hopefully soon, do some consolidation. So yeah, so Philodendron hederaceum, also one that you want to let dry out in between waterings. When the leaves start to curl in a little bit, that's also a good sign that you need to water your plant. I try to just check it by sticking my finger in, This is in terracotta again, so this feels cool to the touch, and so that tells me there's still moisture down there. But I can also see it too because I must have just watered in that spot and it was a big gaping hole. And the soil is dark, so that also is an indicator that this does not need watering. They can be kind of messy. They put off these little leaf sheaths, and so that can be kind of annoying to clean up, but that's just part of it. This one is starting to grow a long tendril. It is a vining plant, so it is something they can have cascading down. They are a little bit more low light tolerant, but the leaves do come in small. And if you have it trailing down, that's also another thing that will happen, is that the leaves will get small as well. That's why these aren't super huge, because they were draping down the side of an overhang in an office building. So I would keep this also a pretty airy mix, maybe put a little bit of bark in there, but potting mix, perlite, and orchid bark would be my primary things to put in there. I haven't noticed any leaf spots on this, but now that I think about it, the plant at work, some of the leaves, they look like they have some type of burn. It's hard to see because it is like pretty far away from where you would see it as a person, but me, who is inspecting to see if there are brown leaves that I need to grab, then I do look much more closely at it. But yeah, around the edging there's a little bit of burning, and I don't know if that has to do with maybe overwatering in the past or what, but that might be something that would be interesting to look into. Philodendron hederaceum. And lastly is a plant that I don't use very often in my accounts. In fact, I don't have it at all in my accounts that I did have it from, because the plants were old. They were on, if I remember correctly, either like a triangular pyramid totem, or I don't think it might have been a regular wooden totem, I'm not entirely sure, but it was strange looking. And it's too bad. It's not something that I've ever seen since to be used. But luckily I grabbed the guy who trading them in, swapping them out for me because they didn't look very good. I had them swapped out. But I caught him that day and was able to grab some cuttings. And this is so slow growing. But I had a lot more vines at the time, but I think I let them sit for too long. And so not a whole lot survived. It has been slow growing. I've lost leaves, but I do have some growth points on here, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed nothing happens. And inside here are 2 new growth points as well, so it's coming along. Right, this is a Scindapsus pictus. I don't know the variety name since it's not something that we have used. In fact, I think I asked my boss when he was showing me the account what the cultivar name was, but he wasn't sure. He just knows it is silver pothos, I think. But yeah, Scindapsus pictus. I've just been trying to hang on to this guy. It's the same type of care for all the other plants. I would say maybe a little bit brighter light than like the green variety Aglaonema. So again, east facing window would be probably the best. I also again have it under a grow light because pretty much everything in this room is under a grow light. It's hanging in there. I let it dry in between waterings. It does also curl up when it gets thirsty, so I try not to let it get to that point. I do try to check them. Anything that's about 6 inch of a pot that I've talked about so far, I water probably every 7 to 10 days, sometimes 14 days. The large Aglaonema, the sparkling Sarah that I had that's a 10-inch pot, I probably water that once a month, maybe. So it just depends on the size of the pot, what kind of pot you're using, plastic versus terracotta. So you just have to use your instincts, use your visual cues like leaves curling, wilting, things like that to tell you that the plant is thirsty, and try to make note of how long that was and maybe try to catch it a day or 2 before that. That would be my best recommendation. Scindapsus pictus, unknown cultivar. I thought maybe exotica, but I don't think the leaves are big enough. I don't think it's silver splash either. I know it's not silver yan. I have silver yan, and it definitely doesn't look like that. The leaves are bigger as well. If you know, let me know, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with it, excited that it's still kicking, and that I still have something to work with. So those are the Aroids I received from work. We have a lot of Aroids in the industry. We also have Dracaenas. If you haven't seen that Dracaena video, I will post it as well. Feel free to message me with any questions you have. I'm here as a resource. I would love to help you out. Yeah, and also if you found this useful, feel free to share it with your friends or in Facebook pages around. So I appreciate you watching this, and have a good one.